With respect to the failed assassination attempt on President Trump on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, we talked a bit earlier in the show about the press conference that acting Secret Service Director Ron Rowe had on Friday, which was more or less a recitation of his testimony before Senate Judiciary earlier in the week, equally underwhelming. Mike Benz, who is a cybersecurity guy in Trump's State Department, now runs the Freedom Foundation online for.
Did you say freedom?
That's all he wants. Same thing with, just like Kamala.
Well, when she's a little girl. What do you want? Mama, I want freedom.
Mike Benz wants freedom too online. Mike Benz had this to say, though, about whistleblowers who've come forward. And by the way, in addition to that Secret Service agent who sent that email that Susan Crabtree reported last week, basically saying that for a long time we have performed poorly. We just look good doing it, and talking about the need for leadership change at the supervisory level. There's another whistleblower, at least according to Mike Benz, who is saying that there was a stand-down order given to Secret Service counter snipers, which prompted Senator Ron Johnson, Wisconsin Republican, to put out a tweet calling on whistleblowers to contact his office. Here's Mike Benz.
Again, we have an affidavit from a Secret Service whistleblower that they were supposed to be there, but they were told to stand down. And so everything else that you're identifying here really flows from this question of why they had such lax security, why they chose to ignore so many standard protocols. Well, that question may be answered by knowing the name of the officer who ordered that stand down from the roof. And that happened at 2 points, right? There was supposed to be someone on the roof. That person had to stand down. And there was supposed to be, as you mentioned, a sniper team with a line of sight to the roof. And they were not there. Now, whether they wandered off randomly or were they given a stand down order, were they told by someone else to go to a different roof? Well, the question here is sort of solved by knowing the name of the person who gave that order, because then you just get all the comms of that agent or officer and see who they're connected to, what advance notice they have. Were they in communications with the FBI? Did they have advance knowledge that there was a deranged loner planning to use the roof? Because if that's the case, then it's case closed and we can move right to prosecution.
Well, it's interesting, though, the phraseology that Ron Rowe uses as compared to Benz. There was supposed to be somebody on that roof, like there was an assignment,
right?
As opposed to Ron Rowe, who's saying there should have been somebody on the roof, like it was a failure of imagination. So which was it? And, frankly, the more time we spend parsing what does should have been versus there was supposed to be mean, the more conspiracy theories enter into the public consciousness because of the lack of forthrightness by Ron Rowe and the Secret Service and, frankly, the FBI. And if we have to wait for this task force to come back with its blue ribbon report on why Secret Service can't get its act together to make sure they can communicate with local law enforcement under their charge, then it's only going to deteriorate the confidence in Secret Service and FBI more significantly. For more on this, Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, is a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's always great to be on the show. Thank you for having me back.
So what was your reaction to Ronald Rowe's offerings a couple of times last week?
Well, we need to continue the investigation. I don't think any bit of information is always slam dunk, we're done, let's move on. We've got to really dig into this, because even if it was somebody, above that team that told them, hey, stand down, I don't think that would have come from just some individual in the Secret Service. If it's at that level, we need to continue to look higher and see who directed them, who in DHS at the departmental level said, hey, we need to cut down on Trump's security. That's a waste of time, and he doesn't deserve it, or whatever may have been said, that needs and deserves further investigation. Look, even if it's the most benign example, the failure of imagination. Somebody just said, well, we're kind of tight, so we'll just skimp on that one. That's not going to be a problem. That's still a massive failure for what is supposed to be the primary protective agency in our country's system. I think I've told you this before, but that event had been declared a national security special event. That is a term of art. It's in law, actually, that when that designation is given to any event, it belongs to the Secret Service. They own it. They manage it. Every asset available takes their orders from the Secret Service. Local police don't do their own thing. They don't get told, well, you guys take care of this and, call us if there's a problem. The Secret Service is responsible. And this is what happens at inaugurations, at the Super Bowl, any of that kind of stuff. When it's a national security special event, they own it.
Right, yes. And so everybody says they own it, and they say, oh, it was a Secret Service failure, it was a failure, and they do the whole, it's a collective failure, so nobody individually has to be held accountable kind of rap. We see this all the time. And here's the problem with this, like, continue the investigation. Yeah, fine, okay. This is, we're nearing a month, so we're more than 3 weeks in. This is not unknowable. Like, the decisions that were made and not made, should somebody have been on the roof, or was somebody supposed to be on the roof? Who was it? Who made the call? What did we know about the interoperability versus the inoperability of the systems? Ron Rowe is talking about, in retrospect, maybe we should put somebody with from our team with the local law enforcement, somebody from local law enforcement with our team, so we can all actually communicate. Gee, what a novel idea! When do we just give us your understanding of what happened, and then show us the evidence to support your understanding? Give us the pre-event security plan, make this public. Give us the transcripts redacted, in a rational way if there's identities that need to be protected, but give us the transcript of these radio transmissions so everybody sees it for themselves, and who said what, when, and how this actually went down the way it did.
Yeah, I agree. That should happen. It has not yet. That's why I'm saying we need to continue.
Well, I know, but how long does this take? This just does not seem like this is that complicated to get to those conclusions and present that information. That's my point.
I hear you, and I agree. It should be done, and I'm not trying to be a shill for the state Secret Service here. Believe me, I'm as ticked about this as you are. I do protective stuff. I teach it. I help non-governmental entities do this appropriately, and the Secret Service failed. But right now, at this moment, the Secret Service is as busy as they're ever going to get. They've got people out all over the place. However, this is a pretty darn significant event. The former president, presumptive candidate for one of the two major parties, was almost shot through the head if he hadn't turned his head at one precise moment in time. And it was solely because somebody somewhere failed to do their job or was told to not to do their job, and we need the answer. But just screaming about the time, we got to get it done. They've got to do it. We need to keep pushing them. But, I don't think we're ready to jump off the boat and say, well, this is obviously a conspiracy because they didn't get us our answers yet. Remember, they're dealing with Mayorkas here, who has been, an obstruction to the truth basically since the day he got into office, and seems to have no problem looking senators and congressmen in the eye and lying to them. That's who you're holding responsible, but it needs to get done.
Well, what about the gunman, Thomas Crooks? Are we ever going to know a motive of why he was doing what he did?
I doubt it. And that's just, we should have all the information from all these different places he went. We need to stop this idea that we've got to protect the killer's thoughts and everything else because somebody thinks that that might be inflammatory. The American people should know that. This is like holding the manifest another shooter for almost a year before it finally was leaked because they didn't want to, bother trans people because this person was trans. I'm sorry. The American people deserve to know this information, and that one, I'm pessimistic. That's why I said I doubt it. I'm not saying we should. We should know. We deserve to know if there's any motive there. Clearly, there's some mental health issues involved. That's not an excuse. That's almost always a contributing factor. But there's obviously some political motivation there as well.
The DOD did not cover themselves in glory last week, I should say. So they announced that there's a plea deal with with KSM, the architect of 9/11, and other terrorists, that will spare them the death penalty. This plea bargain was reached after, I don't know, nearly 18 years pending the adjudication of this matter. And then a couple of days later, they said, no, there's no plea deal. What's going on there?
Well, clearly, someone delegated to apparently this one-star lawyer that she could negotiate this deal. I'm with you. 18 years to negotiate a deal. Come on, this guy was the worst mass murderer for a single event, I think, in history. Until you add in, genocidal people like Hitler and Pol Pot and Stalin. But they just came to this conclusion now, and suddenly Lloyd Austin, who is that woman's boss, says, after seeing the response of everybody out there, the victims' families, the public, members of Congress, I'm going to change this, and we're not going to give them the deal. You're telling me that's the first time Lloyd Austin heard that? That one-star general hasn't been reporting to Austin's office all this time about the progress of this so-called process?
Maybe Austin was AWOL. Maybe he was AWOL again.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know that he was being treated for a condition for a week and a half.
It's crazy.
So I spoke with a former U.S. attorney because when this issue became public last week, I wondered if this is just about sort of ideological opposition to the death penalty from this regime, or is there something that they don't want to come out during trial? And his position was it's really their ideological opposition to the death penalty. Is that your view as well? First of all, to jerk 9/11 families around more than they have been is, continues to be sort of a rolling national outrage. But in addition to that, is what that deal that was announced and then rescinded, is that, do you think, just about opposition to the death penalty, or is it something else?
No, I think it's something else. Look, if he had a trial today, gave him the death penalty, 10 years before this guy's going to get executed. That's just the way our system is, because there's so many steps to take before you can actually execute the execution. But this is, I believe, more kowtowing to the part of the Democratic Party that wants radical Islam to go away as an issue. They don't want to irritate the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars of their party, and executing this guy. They'd be making him a martyr again, like they're trying to do with the Hamas leader that was taken out by Israel. So all of that is connected. I'm not sure it's that much in the death penalty, though clearly there's a large number of Democrats who are against the death penalty for anybody, regardless of the heinous nature of their crimes. But I don't think that's the sole answer. I think it's more the politics. It's an election year, and I think the election year politics is now what caused Austin to reverse it, because they realized, whoa, we ran this up the flagpole, and not as only is nobody saluting, but they're peeing on the flagpole. So we got to get out of this one quick. And Austin was probably told by the White House, hey, this isn't working. You reverse it. It's pure politics on an issue that should have absolutely nothing to do with politics. And you're right. The only victims now are the people who were already victimized, the families of the people who were killed on 9/11.
Speaking of elections this year, Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan dictator, managed to squeak out an election victory last week. Very interesting. Real comeback stories, given the exit polling showing him down 20 and 30 points. But nevertheless, we talked to Venezuelan who's in this country now and gave us some color on the ground there. And one of the things he mentioned to us was that the opposition party to Maduro, fearing reprisals, since Maduro is not one averse to death squads and the like, they found sanctuary in the Argentinian embassy, thanks to President Milei, not in the U.S. embassy. And what a comment that was on where we stand, despite the State Department's, we're concerned about the outcome of the election that may not have been on the up and up. Boy, they have some keen insight there. The American posture towards Maduro and Venezuela, what will be done, what should be done, and a comment on the fact that Venezuelan opposition party members need to find refuge at the Argentinian embassy and not lacking confidence, I suppose, in finding refuge at the U.S. embassy.
Yeah, I think that's a heck of a message. Even if the American embassy was willing to take them, and obviously we're not sure whether they would have or not, the fact that the Venezuelan opposition, in their estimation, thought going to the Argentinian embassy was a safer and more sure thing than going to the American embassy is a sad, sad commentary on how people in Latin America see the Biden-Harris administration. It's just crazy that that's their impression of us. It's wrong. We should be the place that everyone can go if they feel that they are being set upon by their own government, particularly a dictator like Maduro. I thought you were very kind with your
yes.
thing of his
comeback.
Wonderful comeback. Yeah, that's sort of God. It's just so irritating to see these things go on, and that's somebody our president calls to try and get their help with our energy problems that he could solve himself in a minute. It's just ridiculous. But this is the same administration that still wants to integrate Iran into normal relations in the Middle East, when Iran is stirring up all of their employees, the various proxies in Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Syrian government, to widen the war against Israel. They still think Iran can be our friends. That's lunacy. And they do the same thing in Latin America with the Venezuelans.
Steve Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer, top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow of the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen Bucci, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, you take care too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your